The moment the screaming sirens faded into the morning air, Rowan Hale understood that his life was about to change in a way he never imagined. 1 hour earlier, he had been just another mechanic at a small auto shop on the outskirts of the city, a quiet man who kept to himself and repaired engines with the kind of care usually reserved for living things. But now, standing in the middle of the road with trembling hands covered in someone else's blood and the faint smell of burnt rubber still hanging in the air, he felt something shift inside him. Everything began when he saw a police cruiser slammed against a traffic pole, its front crushed, its windshield shattered, and an injured female officer lying motionless across the steering wheel. Without hesitation, Rowan stepped into the road and ran toward her, ignoring the angry horns behind him and the fear creeping up his chest. He didn't know her name. He didn't know who she was. All he knew was that she needed help, and Northwest one else was close enough to reach her in time. If you believe kindness should always come first, if you believe in second chances and doing the right thing even when it costs you, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soulful Stories. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. The morning sun cast a pale glow on the twisted metal as Rowan forced the car door open and lifted the injured woman, Officer J. Avery, into his arms. Her uniform was torn, her face bruised, and her breathing shallow. He carried her carefully, step by step, until paramedics arrived and took her from him. Even then, he stayed by her side until they drove away, feeling responsible for a stranger whose life had collided with his in the most unexpected way. The medics told him she had lost a lot of blood, and those few minutes he had spent pulling her out and holding pressure on her wounds might be the only reason she survived the ride to the hospital. By the time Rowan returned to his job at the Willowstone Auto Yard, he was exhausted but relieved. His clothes were stained, his heart still drumming wildly. Yet he felt good, like he had done something meaningful for the first time in a long time. But his boss, Wade Carmick, didn't see it that way. WDE was a man who cared about two things: money and obedience. He stood at the entrance with arms crossed, the kind of posture that warned Rowan he was already guilty of something. Wade began lecturing him about leaving work during a busy shift, arguing with customers, losing business, and embarrassing the shop by getting involved in something that didn't concern him. Rowan tried to explain. He tried to tell his boss that someone's life had been at stake, that he couldn't just keep fixing engines while watching someone die meters away. But Wade didn't care. He fired Rowan that afternoon, handing him a paper to sign and telling him to leave his tools behind. Rowan walked home slowly, every step heavier than the last, trying to convince himself that doing the right thing was worth the cost of losing his job. He lived alone in a small house he had inherited from his grandfather, a modest place surrounded by tall oak trees that rustled softly in the daylight breeze. When he stepped inside and closed the door behind him, the silence felt unnatural. He sank into a chair, still wearing his stained shirt, wondering what he would do next. Jobless, with bills to pay and with no one to turn to, Rowan felt the world shrink around him. But his heart, though bruised, remained steady. He kept reminding himself that Officer Avery was alive somewhere in that big city hospital because he had chosen action over fear. And that thought, faint as it was, gave him enough strength to get through the day. What he didn't expect was the sound of engines the next morning. Dozens of them. He stepped outside, confused, shielding his eyes from the bright daylight, only to see a long line of police patrol cars rolling up his street. 10 vehicles stopped right in front of his house, their lights flashing softly under the morning sun. Neighbors peered through windows and gates, whispering among themselves, wondering what Rowan could have possibly done to attract this kind of attention. His heart raced, not with guilt but with fear of the unknown. Then the doors opened and officers stepped out, uniforms crisp, faces serious, boots landing in unison on the asphalt like a ceremonial march. At the front of the group stood a tall officer with a stern expression. But before he could speak, another figure emerged from the last patrol car. A woman, steady but fragile, moving slowly as though each step required courage. It was Officer J. Avery. Her forehead still carried a bandage. Her arm rested in a sling, but her eyes were full of life and emotion. She walked toward Rowan with the sunlight behind her, illuminating everything with a warm glow that felt almost unreal. She approached him not as a police officer fulfilling her duty, but as someone who had been granted a second chance at life because a stranger refused to look away. She raised her uninjured hand, and the officers behind her formed a semicircle, not to threaten, but to honor. The tall officer opened a case he had been carrying and held out a medal shining brightly in the daylight. Officer Avery told Rowan that the department reviewed traffic camera footage and witness statements. They saw how he had risked his safety for her, how he acted faster than anyone else, and how those actions kept her alive long enough to be saved. She explained that 10 patrol cars had come because the entire unit wanted to thank him personally. Rowan felt overwhelmed, tears stinging his eyes as he realized that the world had not turned its back on him after all. The officers applauded him, and for the first time in years, Rowan felt seen not as a quiet mechanic, not as someone small or unimportant, but as a man who chose compassion over convenience. Word of the moment spread quickly. Neighbors stepped out to watch, some cheering softly, others simply moved by the sight. Officer Avery told Rowan that while she couldn't get his old job back, she could ensure something better, a recommendation to the city's vehicle maintenance division, where people were valued not just for their skills, but also for their character. Rowan accepted the medal with shaking hands, feeling the weight of gratitude resting warmly on his shoulders. It was the kind of moment that rewrote the story of a life, transforming pain into purpose and loss into an unexpected beginning. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Mirror Stories. Your support means more than you know and helps bring powerful real-life stories to more people. Before we end, please comment below what you would have done if you were in Rowan's place. Your thoughts matter. In the end, Rowan learned that doing the right thing may cost you, but it also finds its way back to you in ways you never expect. The world often feels harsh and unkind, but moments like these remind us that compassion still echoes across lives, binding strangers together and turning ordinary people into quiet heroes. And as Rowan watched the patrol cars drive away under the warm daylight, he realized that sometimes all it takes is one brave choice to change everything.